The dust swirled around Amelia Davis as she stepped off the stagecoach, her body nearly buckling beneath her as her feet touched the hard-packed dirt of Promise Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1876. She clutched her worn medical bag with trembling fingers, the weight of it nearly pulling her slight frame to the ground. The journey had been brutal, 3 days of jostling and jolting that had left her pale face even paler, the shadows beneath her eyes darker than the gathering storm clouds overhead. "You sure you're at the right place, miss?" The stagecoach driver looked down at her with doubt creasing his weathered face. "Ain't much call for a lady doctor out here, especially one who looks like a strong wind might carry her off." Amelia straightened her spine, ignoring the pain that shot through her back. "Yes, I'm quite certain, doctor." Amelia Davis, reporting as requested. "This town advertised for a physician and I answered the call." The driver shook his head, spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dirt and began unloading her trunk. "Your funeral, miss. Folks around here expect a doctor to be able to pull calves, set broken bones from barroom brawls, and ride out to distant homesteads in all manner of weather." "I am fully qualified," she replied, though her voice wavered slightly. She had graduated top of her class at the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania, but the driver's words echoed the doubts that had followed her throughout her education and brief practice in Philadelphia. "Doctor, you say?" A deep voice cut through the dusty air. Amelia turned to find herself staring at the broad chest of a man who towered over her 5'2" frame. She tilted her head back to meet his eyes striking green ones that were currently narrowed in what appeared to be disbelief. "Yes," she said firmly. "Dr. Amelia Davis." The man removed his hat, revealing dark blonde hair that curled slightly at the ends. "Ethan Jameson. Town council sent me to meet you. We were expecting a man," she finished for him. "Yes, I'm aware. My credentials were apparently impressive enough that no one thought to ask about my gender." She held out her hand, which disappeared completely in his large, calloused grip. "No, madam," he said, releasing her hand. "We were expecting someone who looks like they could survive the winter." Amelia felt heat rush to her face. "I assure you, Mr. Jameson, that what I lack in physical stature, I make up for in knowledge and determination." He studied her for a long moment, taking in her delicate features, the way her dove-gray traveling dress hung loosely on her frame, and the slight wheeze in her breathing a remnant of the childhood illness that had nearly taken her life and left her lungs permanently weakened. "Knowledge don't count for much when you're trying to reach the Marshall Place in a blizzard," he said finally. "And determination won't stop you from freezing to death if your horse throws you 5 miles from town." "Mr. Jameson," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "I did not travel 2,000 miles to be judged on my appearance rather than my abilities. Now, if you would be so kind as to direct me to my accommodations, I would like to rest before meeting with the town council." A flicker of something respect perhaps passed over his face. "Yes, madam," he said, lifting her trunk with an ease that made her envious. "Mrs. Fletcher's boarding house is this way. Council meets tomorrow at noon." As they walked down the muddy Main Street, Amelia felt the stares of the townspeople. A woman in a doctor's coat was curiosity enough, but one who looked as she did with her too thin frame and complexion that had earned her the nickname Ghost during her childhood was practically a spectacle. "Town's been without a proper doctor for 6 months, Ethan said, breaking the silence. "Old Doc Myers had a stroke, left a lot of folks without care." "Then they should be grateful for my arrival rather than doubtful," Amelia replied. "Folks out here are practical," he said. "Life's hard enough without putting their trust in someone who might not be up to the task." "And you've decided I'm not." Ethan stopped and turned to face her. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held no malice. "I've decided nothing, Dr. Davis. But I've seen what this country does to people who aren't ready for it. It breaks them." Amelia lifted her chin. "Then it's fortunate I was broken long ago, Mr. Jameson. There's little left to damage." Something shifted in his gaze, then curiosity, perhaps. But he said nothing more as they continued their walk to Mrs. Fletcher's boarding house. The next day, Amelia stood before the town council in the small building that served as both courthouse and meeting hall. 5 men sat behind a long table, expressions ranging from open skepticism to outright hostility. Ethan stood at the back of the room, arms crossed over his chest. "Gentlemen," she began, "I understand your concerns about my physical limitations. However, I assure you that I am fully qualified to serve as this town's physician." "No disrespect, Miss Davis," began one of the men, a portly banker by the name of Williams. "Dr. Davis," she corrected firmly. "Doctor," he amended with a slight smile, "but this is rough country. We need someone robust, someone who can handle the demands of frontier medicine. My skill with a scalpel does not depend on my ability to win an arm wrestling contest, Mr. Williams," Amelia replied, drawing a few chuckles from the assembled townspeople who had come to witness the meeting. "Judge me by my work, not my appearance." "Fair enough," said another councilman. "What happens when you're called out to the Hanson place in the middle of a snowstorm? It's a hard 10-mile ride, and last winter we lost 3 men to the cold on that very road." Before Amelia could answer, Ethan's deep voice cut through the room. "I'll take her." All heads turned toward him. "What's that, Jameson?" asked Williams. Ethan stepped forward. "I said I'll take her. Any emergency calls outside town limits, I'll escort the doctor." Amelia frowned. "That's hardly necessary," Ethan finished for her. "Maybe not in Philadelphia, Dr. Davis, but out here, it's common sense. Even our strongest riders go in pairs during the bad months." She wanted to argue but knew it would only reinforce their perception of her as stubborn and impractical. "Very well. Mr. Jameson's assistance would be appreciated in such circumstances." The council members exchanged glances. Finally, the eldest, a silver-haired man named Judge Porter, spoke. "We'll give you a month's trial, Dr. Davis. If you prove capable, the position is yours permanently." "Thank you, gentlemen," Amelia said, relief washing through her. "You won't regret your decision." As the meeting adjourned, Ethan approached her. "That was well handled." "Your offer was unexpected," she admitted. "But I'm not sure if it was meant to help me or to protect the town from my perceived incompetence." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Let's call it both for now. Mr. Jameson, Ethan," he corrected. "If we're going to be riding out in blizzards together, we might as well use first names." "Ethan," she conceded. "What exactly do you do in Promise Creek? Are you the sheriff?" he laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his stern face. "No, madam. I ranch about 3 miles out of town, sit on the council because folks ask me to. But I know every trail and shortcut in the county, which makes me a good guide for a city doctor." "I see," Amelia said. "Well, I appreciate the assistance, though I hope to prove it largely unnecessary." "We'll see about that," he replied, settling his hat back on his head. "Your clinic's ready whenever you are. Old Doc Meyer's place has been kept up." For the next 2 weeks, Amelia worked tirelessly to establish her practice. She organized the clinic, inventoried supplies, and began seeing patients, mostly minor complaints at first, as the townspeople tested her abilities with splinters and coughs, before trusting her with more serious matters. She was examining a young boy's broken wrist when the door burst open, and Ethan strode in, carrying a man whose leg was wrapped in a blood-soaked cloth. "Mining accident," Ethan explained tersely. "Rockfall caught Jim here, his leg's in bad shape." Amelia immediately cleared her examination table. "Put him here. I need hot water and my instruments the cabinet by the window." As she cut away the man's pants leg, revealing a compound fracture with bone protruding through torn flesh, she felt Ethan watching her closely. "I need to set this before infection takes hold," she said, not looking up. "Can you hold him down? This will be excruciating." Without hesitation, Ethan moved to brace the miner's shoulders. "I've got him." For the next hour, Amelia worked with steady hands, cleaning the wound, setting the bone, and suturing the deep gashes. Not once did her hands shake, nor did her breath falter, despite the physical exertion. When she finally straightened, her back aching and her apron covered in blood, the miner was unconscious but stable. "He'll need careful watching for the next day or two," she said, washing her hands in the basin. "Infection is still the greatest risk." Ethan handed her a clean towel. "You're staying with him," she nodded. "I'll sleep on the cot in the back room. Would you inform his family? Already sent word." Ethan studied her with new eyes. "You didn't flinch, not once." Amelia met his gaze evenly. "Pain and blood don't frighten me, Mr. Jameson, never have." "Ethan," he reminded her quietly. "Ethan," she echoed. He helped her clean the surgery room before leaving, and as she settled in for her vigil beside the injured miner, Amelia reflected that it was the first time since her arrival that someone had looked at her with something other than doubt in their eyes. The miner recovered, and word of Dr. Davis's skill spread quickly through Promise Creek. By the end of her trial month, even her most vocal critics had grudgingly accepted her presence, if not her capabilities. The council voted unanimously to offer her the permanent position. It was a crisp autumn morning when the first real test came. Amelia was checking her supplies when Ethan burst through the clinic door, his expression grave. "Childbirth," he said without preamble. "Sarah Connor out at the Connor homestead. Her husband rode in saying the baby's coming wrong and she's bleeding badly." Amelia was already gathering her obstetric instruments. "How far?" 7 miles. Bad road." She hesitated only briefly. "I'll need to ride, not take the buggy." Ethan's eyebrows rose. "Can you manage?" "I'll have to," she replied, closing her bag. "A woman's life depends on it." 10 minutes later, they were galloping out of town, Amelia clinging to the saddle of a steady mare Ethan had procured for her. Each jarring step sent pain through her chest, her weakened lungs protesting the exertion, but she kept pace with him, refusing to slow their progress. When they arrived at the Connor homestead, Sarah's husband met them at the door, his face ashen. "She's bad off, Doc, real bad." Inside, Amelia found Sarah pale and semi-conscious, her nightgown soaked with blood. Working quickly, she examined the laboring woman. "The baby's shoulder is presenting first," she explained to Ethan, who had stayed to assist. "I need to turn it or neither mother nor child will survive." For the next 2 hours, Amelia fought for both lives, her small hands working with skill and precision that belied her fragile appearance. When finally the baby boy's cry filled the small cabin, Amelia allowed herself a moment of relief before turning her attention to stopping Sarah's hemorrhage. It was nearly midnight when she finally stepped outside, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. Ethan handed her a cup of coffee, which she accepted gratefully. "They'll both live," she said, her voice hoarse. "It was close," he nodded. "Too close, you're dead on your feet." "I've been worse," she replied, though in truth she wasn't sure that was accurate. Her whole body trembled with fatigue and each breath was a struggle. "We'll stay the night," Ethan decided. "You need rest before the ride back." Too weary to argue, Amelia nodded. Mr. Connor prepared a pallet for them in the main room, Ethan insisting she take the small sofa while he slept on the floor nearby. In the quiet darkness, Amelia found herself speaking. "I had scarlet fever as a child, the worst case the doctor had seen. Everyone expected me to die." Ethan was silent for a moment. "But you didn't." "No," she agreed. "I lived, but my lungs never recovered fully. My parents treated me like glass afterward, so did everyone else. Too frail for this, too delicate for that. I became a doctor to prove them wrong, and have you?" "Proven them wrong?" Amelia sighed. "Some days I think so. Other days, when I can barely catch my breath after climbing a flight of stairs, I wonder if they were right all along." The silence stretched between them, comfortable rather than awkward. "My father was the strongest man I knew," Ethan finally said. "Could break a wild horse before breakfast and work from sunup to sundown without rest. Died of a fever that a good doctor might have cured. Strength isn't always about how much you can lift." Amelia turned her head to look at him, his profile barely visible in the dim light from the banked fire. "What is it about then?" "What you did today," he answered simply. Riding out here knowing it might kill you because someone needed you more than you needed safety. His words settled over her like a warm blanket, and despite her exhaustion and the pain in her chest, Amelia slept better that night than she had in years. The next morning, they rode back to town more slowly, Ethan insisting on frequent stops to allow Amelia to rest. News of Dr. Davis's successful delivery spread quickly, and by evening, several townspeople had stopped by the clinic with gifts: freshly baked bread, preserves, even a hand-knitted shawl from Mrs. Fletcher. "Seems you've won them over," Ethan observed, leaning against the doorframe of the clinic as Amelia organized her new bounty. "For now," she said with a small smile, "until the next crisis makes them question my capabilities again." "I don't think so," he replied. "Folks around here respect grit more than muscle. You've shown plenty of the former." As autumn deepened into winter, Ethan became a frequent visitor to the clinic, often bringing supplies from his ranch: fresh eggs, milk, occasionally venison. Amelia found herself looking forward to his visits, the easy conversation that had developed between them a bright spot in her often demanding days. The first heavy snow came in early December, blanketing Promise Creek in white. Amelia woke to find her clinic door blocked by a drift nearly 3 feet high. She was contemplating how to clear it when a familiar figure appeared, shovel in hand. "Thought you might need a path cleared," Ethan said, already at work on the snow. "Thank you," she replied, wrapping her shawl tighter against the cold. "Would you like coffee? I just made a fresh pot." Inside, as they sat across from each other at her small table, Amelia noticed Ethan seemed uncharacteristically hesitant. "Is something wrong?" she asked. He placed his cup down carefully. "Town's holding its Christmas social next week. Dancing, food, the usual festivities." "Yes, Mrs. Fletcher mentioned it," Amelia said, waiting for him to continue. "I was wondering if you might accompany me," he said, the words coming out in a rush that was unlike his usual measured speech. Amelia blinked in surprise. "You want to take me to the dance?" "Yes." His green eyes met hers steadily. "If you'd like to go." A mixture of pleasure and apprehension filled her. "Ethan, I should warn you that I'm not much of a dancer. My stamina—" "We don't have to dance," he interrupted gently. "Just being there together would be enough." The sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. "Then yes, I would be honored to accompany you." The night of the social arrived, and Amelia found herself more nervous than she'd been facing the town council. She wore her best dress, a deep blue wool with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. Mrs. Fletcher had helped her arrange her hair, pulling the chestnut locks into a softer style than her usual practical bun. When Ethan arrived to escort her, the appreciative look in his eyes made her cheeks warm. "You look beautiful," he said simply. The social was held in the town hall, decorated with evergreen boughs and red ribbons. Tables laden with food lined one wall, and a small group of musicians played lively tunes while couples danced in the center of the room. True to his word, Ethan didn't pressure Amelia to dance, content to sit with her and introduce her to ranchers and their families who lived too far out to visit the clinic regularly. But when the musicians struck up a slow waltz, he turned to her with a question in his eyes. "Just one," she agreed, placing her hand in his outstretched one. On the dance floor, his hand at her waist was steady and supportive as he guided her through the simple steps. Amelia was acutely aware of the difference in their physical presence, his tall, powerful frame dwarfing her slight one, yet she felt oddly safe in his arms. "This isn't so bad, is it?" he asked softly. "No," she admitted, "though I may regret it tomorrow when my muscles protest." His expression grew serious. "Amelia, there's something I've wanted to tell you." The use of her first name, rare even now, caught her attention. "Yes. That first day when you stepped off the stagecoach," he began, "I thought you wouldn't last a week." "I've never been so glad to be wrong about someone," she smiled up at him. "It's a common mistake. People see my size and make assumptions." "It wasn't just that," he admitted. "It was the look in your eyes, like you were already half defeated. But then I saw you work, saw how you fight through the pain every day without complaint, and I realized that what I thought was weakness was actually the opposite." The music continued around them, but Amelia barely noticed, caught in the intensity of his gaze. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. "Your frailty, as you call it, it's not a weakness. It's made you stronger than anyone I know." His voice dropped lower. "You understand suffering in a way most doctors never will. You fight harder because you have to. Your patients sense that." Tears pricked at Amelia's eyes. "I've spent my whole life trying to prove I'm not defined by my limitations. And I'm telling you that those limitations are part of what makes you extraordinary," Ethan replied. "Your frailty is your strength, Amelia, and mine." "Yours," she echoed, confused. The music ended, but they remained in the middle of the floor, oblivious to the couples moving around them. "You've taught me that true strength isn't always visible," he said. "That courage often comes in unexpected packages. You've made me a better man just by being who you are." Amelia's heart hammered in her chest, and not from exertion. "Ethan, are you saying—" "I'm saying I love you," he answered simply. "And I'm asking if you might consider allowing me to court you properly." Joy bubbled up inside her, so intense it nearly took her breath away. "I would like that very much." As winter melted into spring, Ethan's courtship was the talk of Promise Creek. He escorted Amelia on her more distant house calls, brought her wildflowers when they began to bloom on the prairie, and spent many evenings sitting on the small porch of her clinic, talking as the sun set. It was on one such evening in late April when a rider galloped into town, his horse lathered and wild-eyed. "Fire!" the man shouted. "Wildfire moving fast toward the East Range. All hands needed." Ethan was on his feet instantly. "My ranch," he said to Amelia. "The fire's heading straight for it." "Go," she urged. "I'll gather medical supplies and follow. There will be injuries." For the next 24 hours, Amelia worked alongside the townspeople and ranchers fighting the fire. She treated burns, smoke inhalation, and exhaustion, setting up a makeshift field hospital at the schoolhouse. Ethan led a team of men creating fire breaks, working tirelessly to save homes and livestock. When the fire was finally contained, the damage was severe but not catastrophic. 2 homesteads were lost completely, and Ethan's ranch had suffered damage to several outbuildings, but his main house and most of his cattle had been spared. Amelia found him sitting on a charred fence post, his face streaked with soot, staring at the blackened landscape. "Are you injured?" she asked, medical bag in hand. He shook his head. "Just tired. You shouldn't be out here, Amelia. The air's still thick with smoke." "I go where I'm needed," she replied, sitting beside him. "That's the job." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, taking in her soot-stained dress, the dark circles under her eyes and the slight wheeze in her breathing that always worsened when she pushed herself too hard. "Marry me," he said suddenly. Amelia's eyes widened. "What? Marry me?" he repeated. "I was going to wait. Do this properly with a ring and flowers, but seeing you out here, still standing after everything, I don't want to wait another day." "Ethan, are you certain?" "I'll never be robust. I'll have days when I can barely leave my bed. Children might be difficult, perhaps impossible." He took her small, capable hands in his larger ones. "I'm not asking to marry some idealized version of you. I'm asking to marry you exactly as you are, your limitations, your strength, all of it." Tears spilled down Amelia's cheeks, cutting clean tracks through the soot. "Then yes. Yes, I will marry you." They were wed in June, with wildflowers decorating the small church and the entire town in attendance. Judge Porter performed the ceremony, his earlier skepticism replaced by genuine fondness as he pronounced them husband and wife. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the gathering, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Ethan Jameson, and I'd like to add that our town has never been better served than by our Dr. Davis Jameson, who has taught us all that true strength comes in many forms." As Ethan kissed his bride, cheers erupted from the congregation. Amelia's heart was so full she thought it might burst, her earlier fears giving way to the certainty that she had found not just a husband, but a partner who saw her completely. They settled into a rhythm that accommodated both their needs, Amelia continuing her practice in town, Ethan managing his ranch with the help of hired hands. On her stronger days, Amelia would ride out to the ranch, sometimes seeing patients there. On her weaker ones, Ethan would bring her supplies and sit with her in the clinic, reading while she rested. A year after their wedding, against the odds, Amelia discovered she was with child. The pregnancy was difficult, requiring long periods of bed rest, but Ethan never once complained about the additional responsibilities that fell to him. "You carried the burden alone for so long," he told her one evening as he massaged her swollen feet. "Let me carry it for a while." Their daughter was born on a crisp autumn day, a healthy, robust child with her father's green eyes and her mother's determined spirit. They named her Hope, a testament to the future they had found together. As Amelia nursed her daughter in the rocking chair Ethan had crafted, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She was still frail in body, the birth had further weakened her constitution, but she had never felt stronger in spirit. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, coming to stand behind her, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. "About strength," she replied, looking up at him with a smile. "And how it finds us in the most unexpected ways." He bent to kiss her forehead. "Like a slip of a doctor who rode through a blizzard to deliver a baby." "Like a rancher who saw value in what others called weakness," she countered. Hope gurgled contentedly between them, a perfect blend of their separate strengths. Outside, the Wyoming wind blew across the prairie, bending the tall grasses but never breaking them. Much like the woman who had once been called too frail, they simply yielded to the force and stood again when it passed, more resilient for having weathered the storm.